Guys, Justin Morgan here, and today I want to talk about. I've been seeing a lot of people that are involved in weightlifting and muscle building of some form or another say that they, for their New Year's resolution, they want to become a raw vegan, and they are worried that they will lose muscle or that they will lose strength, and I want to address some of those issues and give a few tips for some things you might want to consider. One, I think the two primary things that I think you really need to consider are one, two big things that always come up, but one is your caloric intake and what you're currently doing, because a lot of people just don't know. They have no idea what they're currently doing, so when they switch, they have no idea if they change. Anyways, the second thing is what your current lifting routine is and what you're currently doing. So I'm going to quantify both of those things and give you a few tips on how you can quantify those and determine what, at least make good, accurate connections behind what you end up doing and what you're currently doing. So currently, you need to figure out how many calories you're taking in on a daily basis and some idea or some rough estimate of what your macronutrients are. So if you normally eat, some ratio, say you normally eat 100 grams of protein in a day, you eat maybe 60 or 70 grams of fat in a day, and you eat 700 grams of carbohydrate. That's not too far off from what I normally do, by the way. But you come up with your caloric intake, and that's whatever that looks like. I don't know, maybe that's 3,500 calories or something like that. So you come up with something like that, and you want to take those and transfer them over to a raw vegan diet. I would recommend keeping those identical, regardless of what ratio or what you're trying to do. I would keep everything identical, and the reason for that is because mentally, if you suffer some loss or you feel different, immediately your tendency is going to want to be to, well, it's this new diet I'm on. That's what's wrong here. Something's wrong with this diet. And that may not be the case. It may be you didn't sleep very well the last night, the night before. It may be you're coming down with a cold. It may be, any number of factors, but your tendency is going to want to be to blame it on the diet very quickly, because that's what's at the forefront of your mind. People are constantly going to be telling you you can't build muscle on that. There's all these factors that play into why mentally your mind's immediately going to assume something is wrong with the diet. And so I do not recommend changing any of your calories or your macronutrients. So some tips in figuring that out, though. Generally, people, when they are on a standard diet of any form or standard vegan diet, they will use oils. Oils will be a major part of their diet, and that is probably the biggest problem in tracking calories, because people will pick up a thing of oil and pour it over the pan, and they'll do one of these numbers and sit it back. And when they try to record their caloric intake, they'll say, oh, I had about a tablespoon of oil. No, you had like 8 or 9 by the time you did this, and then put it back up on the shelf. And the difference is usually more than 1,000 calories just from that. And people are like, oh, well, I maybe 150 calories because I had this little teaspoon of oil. No, you didn't. So there are huge, and it's been studied over and over and over again. People are horrible at tracking their calories. They do not know what is an accurate portion size. And you don't necessarily have to get a scale and weigh out gram by gram everything you use. When I'm at school in my dietetics program, we have that. We have scales that we use in the culinary classes that we take, and we weigh out things, and it's not a big part of the class, but you do have to do it. So I think I'm pretty proficient at doing that, although when I'm at home and just figuring out my own caloric intake, I just do a rough estimate. So I always say I eat about this much. And, because I have done that in the past, I know pretty accurately down to, within 100 calories or so how much I'm taking in. But, you really have to follow, some kind of guide. You have to look at labels and read things to figure out if you really are taking in the amount of calories that you believe that you are. And then, transfer that over. Find raw vegan foods that fit that scenario. Okay, so caloric intake. Now, that's just at first. Eventually, I would recommend, some higher carbohydrate intake if you want to be athletic. I think that athletes should have more carbohydrates. I think that the 80-10-10 diet is a fine baseline and guide. That's kind of how I think of it. I might eat a little more fat than what Dr. Douglas Graham prescribes in the 80-10-10 diet, but still yet the same concepts and ideas I really follow and believe in. You could do something like 70-15-15 or 60-20-20 or 70-10-20 or whatever. I don't care. It really doesn't matter. But I personally, I don't use supplements, I don't use oils, I don't use any of those types of things in order to get, my diet down. I just eat food. And that's kind of what I usually recommend to people. If you're currently taking a protein powder or something, keep taking it. Don't stop. And the reason I say that is the same as before. There is a mental connection. Mentally, as soon as you go off of it, you'll think in your head, oh man, I went off the protein, I can't make any gains now. So just stay on it until, that's the only thing you're changing. So eventually you want to get rid of that too. I don't think that they're necessary. I think they're a waste of money. I think you're pissing your money down the toilet. So that's how I feel about that subject. But then the next thing is quantify your training. If you go into the weight room and you're just like throwing around some, set of weights and you're not sure of your sets and reps, and you don't track them in a notebook. I actually keep all of my training on, I have the last year of training all written down in this notebook, and I don't know if you guys can see, I don't track every single lift, and sometimes I follow like programs, I think this was the Mad Cow program when I followed that, and I'll do different things, and sometimes I'll get off, but I have a pretty accurate idea of what I can do. So if I have a major dietary change and I suffer a strength loss, then I at least have something that I can tie it back to, or something I can say, well, why is this? What are my lifestyle factors right now? Why am I not as strong this week as I was last week? And you have to do that. I see so many people, and they're like, oh, I tried that raw vegan diet. I had no energy, and all my lifts suffered. And I'm like, well, how much are you eating? And they're like, oh man, a lot. That's not a number. A lot isn't a number of calories. As soon as somebody says that, I know that they're full of crap. They have no idea what they're eating now. They have no idea what they were eating before. So yeah, if you drop your caloric intake by 1,000 calories or so, you are going to suffer a strength loss. You are not going to have as much energy. You will probably also drop weight. But people do that and they're like, yeah, you can't build muscle on that. It's like, no, you can't build muscle on that because you're an idiot. I can. And I am, and I do. So, as far as like that goes, quantify your caloric intake, your diet, and quantify what you are lifting and what you are doing. And do that regardless of what your dietary change is. If you don't want to be a raw vegan, don't be one. But at least quantify what you're doing, and don't blame your diet when you mess up because you had no idea what you were doing. That's all I got on that subject. Leave your comments and stuff in the box below, and let me know what you think. Talk to you guys later.